astrology never meant that much to me. The woman I thought was just so, she now tells me we ain't compatible. She say, see, look right here on the paper. You should be love your neighbor. Loving my neighbor out of sight. But I'm your man, and I'm just trying to do right. But I can see there's some trouble coming right here with this funky woman. The love I thought you had for me, and I see it's going to some astrology. Well, baby, I can see your face. You better wake up before it's too late. Wake up and make up your mind. The horoscope to find another love sign. Never meant that much to me. The woman I thought was just so, she now tells me we ain't compatible. She says, see, look right here on the paper. You should be loving your neighbor. Loving my neighbor out of sight. But I'm your man, and I'm just trying to do right. And astrologers show that man, all the people that get it for Gemini, Aries, Scorpio, Libra, Taurus, Aquarius, supposed to be the love sign. That's the line. That's the line.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, my name is Kevin Arrow. I am the Exhibition and Projects Manager here at MOCA North Miami. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Conversations at MOCA, the influence of tarot on the eternal return and the Obsidian heart, with artists and tarot card designers Bobby Abate and Emmy Bright, as they interpret Raul de Nieves' exhibition, Eternal Return and the Obsidian Heart, through the lens of the tarot. They'll be joined by exhibition curator Risa Puleo. I brought us in this evening with Readings in Astrology by Curtis Mayfield. I thought that was an appropriate track from 1970. I do want to say that MOCA North Miami exhibitions and programs are made possible with the generous support of the North Miami Mayor and Council and the City of North Miami and the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs. We also thank our Board of Trustees, our corporate and foundation partners, and our members. Conversations at MOCA is made possible is presented by the Green Family Foundation. We want to extend a heartfelt thanks to all of you for your meaningful support. So I'd like to now introduce our two guests and our moderator. Bobby Abate is a queer artist and filmmaker from Callicoon and Brooklyn, New York. He has had screenings and exhibitions that include the New York Film Festival, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Guggenheim in Bilbao, Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art, San Francisco Cinematheque, and the ICA in London and Palm Beach. Emmy Bright is an artist working with drawing, writing, print, and performance. She holds an BA, in art history from the University of Chicago and a master's in education from the Harvard Graduate School of Education and an MFA in print media from the Cranbrook Academy of Art. Risa Puleo is an independent curator and critic. Her exhibition, Monarchs, Brown and Native Contemporary Artists in the Path of the Butterfly, was curated for the Bemis Center for Contemporary Art during her 2017 year as curator in residence. That exhibition traveled to MOCA North Miami in 2018. Risa has written for Art in America, Art Papers, Art 21, Asia Art, Pacific, Hyperallergic, Modern Painters, and many, many other publications. So I'm very happy to welcome live from Chicago, Risa Puleo, from Callicoon in upstate New York, Bobby Abate, and from Detroit, Michigan, please welcome Emmy Bright on camera. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're so happy that you're here. And I am going to hand it over to Risa, who will explain how this evening's program will unfold. And there will be questions that you're welcome to post in the chat. This is also being broadcast on YouTube. So for our audience watching on YouTube, post your questions. We'll deal with them as they come. So thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, I'm going to share my screen now. We are going to, that worked. So my name is Risa Puleo. I'm the exhibitions curator, and wow, over the past year and some months, Raul de Nieves and I have worked closely together, and it's been a real honor to learn from him, to think alongside him, to understand how he comes to make such exquisite work, such as what we're seeing right now in front of us. This is a still from the exhibition, Eternal Return and the Obsidian Heart. And if you've joined us for past presentations, we've talked about that title. That first part of the title, the Eternal Return, is a concept that is philosophical. There's a Nietzschean concept of time, but it's also a concept that is really important to the tarot. So we came up with this program, Raul and I, and Kevin, and a lot of people at MOCA, and thought about who we could invite to interpret the show through the lens of the tarot. And of course, that had to be Bobby Abate and Emmy Bright. They're two artists who are, who have for a very long time worked on their own tarot card, very different. They're going to talk to us today about the differences between the two, how they come to the tarot. But first, I wanted to give you a little introduction about how Raul thinks about the tarot, how it comes to figure in the work. So we're in the exhibition, and just to our left, we're going to turn slightly. There's this installation. It's two figures. These two figures were featured in the Whitney Biennial when Raul participated in that show. I believe it was 2016 or 2017. And the taller figure is called The Longer I Slip Into the Crack, the Shorter My Nose Becomes. So kind of like a reverse Pinocchio figure. But I want you to take a look at this leash that he's carrying, and then on the ground is this figure called Man's Best Friend. Now I'm going to show you an image from the Rider-Waite. So this is the first card in the tarot deck. The Rider-Waite is a tarot deck that is probably the most popular because it was specifically designed to be immediately accessible as images. So if you can interpret an image, you can interpret the Rider-Waite tarot, and that is going to be a really interesting source of our discussion here today, which is the relationship between interpreting art and interpreting tarot. So if we just look at this image, what we see is a young man who's so blissfully absorbed in his own thoughts, like dreaming about the sun, that he's about to walk off a cliff. And behind him is a small dog who's so absorbed in his owner that he's going to follow him. I'm going to show you some other versions of this same card. This on the left is the same card, the Fool, from a tarot deck called El Gran Tarot Esoterico by a Basque psychic from the 1970s, Maurizio, and I'm forgetting her last name. But you'll see here the dog is actually biting him. And then here on the right is the Marseille Tarot. That dog is a little bit more intimate. I want to move quickly through some other tarot-related associations in Raul's show. So you can think about the tarot as an enactment of the Fool's Journey. If you've ever seen the Jodorowsky film, you might be familiar with this concept. And this idea I was saying about eternal return, about time and cyclical time, comes up in Raul's show and works like this. This is a carousel that he made. Excuse me. And the idea of the Fool's Journey in the tarot is that you start out as the fool, and that the tarot is reading where you are in this moment of journey, but there are only so many positions in this journey, and you will endlessly circle around it. But the next time you might come back in a different, more aware position than our kind of blissfully unknowing antagonist. So that's definitely an idea that comes up in this monumental work like this carousel. This is a work called Celebration, and I'm going to just skip ahead. This is a bad image of a tarot card, the Death card, in the Mother Peace Tarot. But it's not necessarily like a sort of Western idea of like death as finality. If you look at the card, you can see this snake, which is biting his own tail. This is also a theme that comes up a lot in Raul's work. The snake is wrapped itself around a skeleton. There's leaves on the ground. It's fall. It's turning into winter. And this is the absorption of that skeleton into the new ground, but it's not a death in a final way. It's actually a new beginning. And that's a really important idea to celebration here. So you can see here the sort of remnants of a body. This is actually a sculpture that Raul took apart in order to be able to build another sculpture. So you can already see how that idea of like death led to a rebirth. And here that death is celebrated with all of these Mardi Gras beads and kind of like in a New Orleans style funeral procession. So those are some of the ways in which the content of the tarot figures into what Raul is thinking. But then there's also the ways in which I think that even his methods as an artist are tarot inflected. So what we're looking at here is a painting of St. George. St. George is a figure that Raul comes to over and over and over again. In fact, he would maybe say that St. George is how he taught himself how to paint. But instead of just painting the same image of St. George over and over in a very tarot inflected way, he chose to represent St. George in different perspectives, like I was saying about that fool's journey. And so I almost think about it as St. George getting reshuffled across different images, different styles, different colors, different mediums, as almost as if they're coming up in different aspects of a tarot spread. So if you've ever gotten your tarot read, you know that if it lands in one place, it means a certain thing. If it lands in another, it means something different. So that's my really brief intro to the tarot from way back when I was a better reader. But now I'm going to pass it to Bobby, who's maybe actually the best reader that I've ever met. And he's going to talk to us about his deck, the Outsider deck, which I'm really excited about. He's about to start a Kickstarter for. And so we'll all maybe get to buy this deck that he's been working on for a very long time. Take it away, Bobby.
Thank you for I'm so happy to participate. Thank you for that amazing introduction too. It's always so nice to get like a guided tour into the work. I'm so happy to see this work. And also the one thing that Risa, you told me about Raul is that he works very intuitively. And that is, of course, the biggest component in a tarot reading, you know, when you're pulling things down from the universe, you're really operating on this intuitive level. And we made sure to schedule this on a important day. Today is the new moon in Capricorn. And when we're talking about obsidian and darkness and this kind of like the dark glass that exists on that pyramid in the center of the exhibition, you know, and you just kind of see a version of yourself. So it's kind of beautiful. We see these different perspectives of St. George, but we also, in that obsidian glass, we see all these different versions of ourselves too inside of it. And that's really what the tarot is. Like, we insert ourselves inside of the tarot. And for the outsider tarot, it's so beautiful to connect it with this exhibition because Raul is such a beautiful outsider, and the colors and all the energy that goes into that work and that kind of outsider aesthetic is exactly what I'm trying to embrace with the outsider tarot as well. As you can see, this is, I'm just about ready to launch the Kickstarter on February 8th. So it's been a very long and ongoing project that I've been doing these drawings and taking the tarot back. You mentioned the Rider-Waite. I went back to the original esoteric framework that went into the Rider-Waite and Thoth decks and kind of reinterpreted everything from the ground up, from the Tree of Life and the four elements and different alchemical properties, and just kind of added outsider, what I call outsider realness to it. You could switch to the slide to the next one. This is, so I'm trying to interweave these two. So these are, this is kind of, I just like to see these things all together. These are just kind of the energy of the deck in color. So the idea was of this deck to take Pamela Coleman Smith's idea, which was just beautiful, simple line drawings with fields of color. And that also connects with this exhibition. All these beautiful fields of color are the first thing that really comes to the eye when you look at this exhibition. And it is also exactly what I really wanted to do with my tarot deck, and just have the fields of color really evoke a psychic response, as well as images that we overlook as the suits on the four suits are lights, bottles, eyes, and roses. So these are things that we just kind of encounter every single day, but to kind of re-examine their magical properties. In the end, like, the tarot is all about finding the hidden magic, right? So we always think about like magic in this, I personally grew up thinking that it's bewitched, like, just like, you know, you poof out and you're just like I've always wanted to be Endora, you know, with these magical properties. But really the real magic, the real witchcraft is in a rock sitting on the ground, or a rose growing out of the earth, and paying attention to these little things. So that celebration piece, Raul's celebration piece, seeing it reconstituted and reused and kind of falling apart and coming back together as something new, talks about these cycles of the earth too, right? And really connects to the earth. We could go to the next slide. I think the next slide is my influences. Oh no, this is just, so I'd love to put this image here for the costuming. This is kind of just a good trio of images. That's Lee Bowery. That card is Four of Roses, influenced by Lee Bowery. We'll go to the next slide. So I just wanted to, Risa already mentioned El Gran Tarot Esoterico. Looking at this exhibition virtually, sadly, I didn't get to look at it in person. I hope to be able to see the work in person at some point. But I really thought of Maritza Guler's The El Gran Tarot Esoterico, which, just looking at this one world image, really seems highly connected to the exhibition itself, with just the details in that wreath of the world card. And the idea of things coming together full circle, like the emerging of opposites. And on the left are these are just my personal influences in the tarot, with all the colors you see. El Gran Tarot Esoterico, I often read with old Italian Sibylla deck. So there's 3 images in there. And I did put the Rider-Waite up there, which is a very rare printing called the University Press printing. The printing process has a huge influence for me in the tarot. the Manly P. Hall, and this one at the bottom, no one really knows this deck. It's called the Thompson Lang. I'm just super attracted to these bright colors. And that's just, I mean, again, like these fields of color that are just, I feel like I'm in the room here. But these fields of color are like the thing that really brings me into this exhibition. I hope we get to see more images. The first one with all that crazy reflection on the black glass of the stained glass. It's just, you're just in the middle of this esoteric space. Like you're transported to another universe. And even in the virtual exhibition, it feels very transported. I really love being in this thing because I feel like I'm in the exhibition. All right, so we can go to the next one. I don't want to take too much time with this. So just for my deck, for the Outsider Tarot, one thing that I did do, which I feel like this exhibition is doing as well in tying, is for the major arcana, I got rid of all of the figures. So the major arcana are just props, set pieces, and costumes. So when we're talking about the Fool's Journey, which was originated with Eden Gray, who was a divination scholar in the 1960s, this little beautiful librarian, ex-silent film actress, who decided to write this book with these keywords on every card in the tarot deck that then launched the tarot into the mainstream in 1968 in the age of Aquarius, all these crazy things. She was the first person to speak of the Fool's Journey, which Risa mentioned, the idea that the Fool is traveling through every single tarot major arcana. Those are the stages of life, enlightenment, and death. And so the one thing that I never really connected with really any tarot deck is the fact that it's full of these figures where that I really thought that like each and every one of us should be inside of it. So here, when a major comes up, you insert yourself into the scene. So I call them scenes. And in the book that I've written for this deck, you get stage direction with the props for every single one of these scenes in the major arcana. So the Fool's Journey is really our own journey through life and completely open to interpretation. As outsiders, I believe that we are just creating our own path through life. We're not following any scribed path. Raul certainly isn't. And that's the same thing with these costumes in this exhibition. Anybody, or so it seems that not anybody, but those costumes go on different bodies. They go on mannequins, but they also go on different bodies. They get transported. They're different people. So they become different things for depending on the people who are wearing them. Can we go to the next slide? And then the minor arcana of the major of the Outsider Tarot just are influenced by outsiders. So here we see Edith Piaf, Jackie Shane, the trans soul singer from the 60s. If you haven't heard Jackie Shane's music, please listen to it. And then, so some of these cards are highly representative, like of Frida Kahlo, and there's Eden Gray. And on the right-hand side, we see Rachel Pollack and Eden Gray doing a tarot reading. In others, there's essential workers in the Seven of Roses. So it's inclusive of all kinds of outsiders and lots of energy. And again, with those really bright colors that anyone can bring, could get psychically charged by. So we could go to the next tarot. And the last thing about the Outsider Tarot is I've gotten rid of the royalty. The royalty is just replaced by elementals, bringing back the elements, the 4 elements. So sparks replace pages, and they operate, so they bring that property into each of the suits, which are connected to an element: fire, water, air, and earth. So there's no more royalty here. There's just like these beautiful outsiders that bring elemental properties into their suits. And some of these are also representative. There's Shirley Chisholm within here, Britney Spears. she comes extra just for the Kickstarter edition, but so if you get that, you get Britney Spears. And then, and so these are the billows, and then the fathoms replace the queens on the next slide. And there we have Kathy Acker, Edith Piaf, the Eternal Mother in the bottles, and that's my grandmother. And then the kings have been replaced by the roots. We have Shirley Chisholm here and Jung. And at the very end, the person who I consider to be the biggest magician slash wizard and witch in the deck, the farmer, this farmer that without whom we would not exist. So this is just a very general overview of the Outsider Tarot. I think there may be one more slide after this. Yes, so if you're interested, just go to outsidertarot.com. These are just little mock-ups that I did for the Kickstarter page. So I'm really excited to hear Emmy and then also start to discuss the exhibition through the lens of the tarot.
Emmy, you have a really different approach to the tarot, so we're gonna move on and we can see what's going on with what you're making.
Great, thanks, Risa, and thank you, Bobby. That was really beautiful, and thank you mostly, Raul, for this gorgeous, gorgeous show. I'm so stoked to talk about it with you guys. I also made a deck. It's on screen. It's here. It's appearing and disappearing behind the green screen. I approached this very, very differently from Bobby, but I did want to say before starting that I really appreciate what the sort of deep knowledge and understanding that Bobby, Risa, and Raul bring to the traditional form of tarot. It takes a lot of study and love to develop this kind of nuanced understanding so you can give these intuitive readings. I would say I more backed into the tarot deck as form. I started with printmaking also, and I think that's something all of us have in relationship. And I think it came mostly from my aversion to doing linear narrative, that I was like, what if my, exhibition or narrative could be shuffled instead of linear? What if things didn't have to be set in stone? And what if it was a little more flexible? So I would say that my deck is my artwork, and the book of interpretation are stories that I've written. And that makes it more technically, I'd say, an oracle deck than a tarot deck. Yet some of the same skills around intuition, projection, reading, and how does one place oneself in relationship to an image, to narrative, and how do you look to, I think a lot about how does one look to something visual for help, and where can we make meaning, and how can and where can art help at all? So if you could change the slide, Risa. So the book is called More Stupids, and the work in it comes from a series of mine called The Stupids. And the deal with The Stupids is things I do in my studio, and I try to find things that are right and wrong at the same time. So like this diagram, which is actually like a poster size screen print and also one of the cards in the deck. You can't be in a Venn diagram. This is set theory. So, if you had like cute things and you had animals, like you definitely have kittens in the middle, but you can't have me and not me. And like, what is in that space, right? And yet, you go not too far into a psychology class and you'd learn about attachment theory. You learn about how in love, like you take others into yourself and others become a part of you. I think also some of grief work is that work of feeling others that are a part of you. And so they're these opposites, right? Me and not me can't be the same thing. And yet we find over and over again that they are. And actually, with COVID, we are both separate and together. We do impact each other. We are not alone in the me and not me. And even in the uprisings for racial justice, you find these opposites like oppression and privilege, that they're absolutely linked. So there are these opposites that can come together. So to me, I try to make these sort of oblique pieces, the stupids, that people can kind of see their own problems into. And so if you'd flip to the next slide. So yeah, I was looking at Bobby's presentation, and I don't have the traditional suits of the tarot, but I do have these sort of like Emmy's artist archetypal forms. So I definitely have blobs, I have text, and I have these monochromes. And all of them are sort of oblique enough that I hope with the title people can see themselves in. So for example, if someone were to pull this colorful one in the middle of the top, it's called DIY Venn diagram. So you'd have to imply what your own lobes are of that, and what is it that you need to figure out in your, like, what are you diagramming? What are you trying to figure out how this and that go together? And likewise, the top left one, which is 2 black blobs, is called Between Us. So, you know, are those blobs coming together or pulling apart? Are you feeling separated, or are you feeling connected? And so it's like, in using these opposites and in using abstraction, I'm hoping that these cards can allow people to have a space to sort of figure out their own possibilities. Because whether, you know, I think we are in some ways on the fool's journey, but we're all on all kinds of journeys all the time. And I think the nice thing about the way this deck is structured is you really get to project your own stuff in. So if, you know, you're worried about your dog, you're going to see stuff about your dog. And if you're worried about your partner, you're going to see stuff about your partner. And if your mom has been hard on you, you're going to see stuff about your mom. So I think that's how and why I use abstraction in this case. So if you would go to the next slide. So this is an example of some of the cards that use text as image. And you can imagine flipping over one of these cards, like the rainbow one at the bottom. If you won't shoot yourself in the foot, I will. It's like, well, you know, there's some aggression in that. So where is that aggression directed towards you, or aggression coming from you? And so when I'm doing these readings and when I'm trying to help other people do these readings, I try to help them see, you know, the thing and its opposite, the thing and its sort of iterative possibilities of meanings. And also I come to this work more as, I'm trained in my undergrad as an art historian. I've worked for ages in museum education and in arts education, and now teach art. So I feel like I'm working from a psychological place, but also really, really working from a museum education place. It's like, what do you see? What does it mean? What does it mean to you? And I think Raul's work, absolutely, all of these characters, all of these colors can be read in those ways also. And I wanted to pick up on a thread that Bobby brought up around printmaking and print media, specifically in both the tarot and Raul's work. When I was looking at his work, I noticed, you know, all of these different color beads, but those bead colors repeat across different forms or bells or furs. So in some ways, he's working with a set palette in a way that can be I was, of course, see, you know, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So when you're a printmaker, everything can be like translated into print media. But I could see there's this way of sort of using and reusing colors and forms over and over again, even as he works in a sculptural and installation form. And if you could go to the next one, Risa. And the final category of cards in my deck are, I would call them the monochromes. So, you know, these are just sort of like fields of color, and it's like, what does the color and the movement get you to? And sometimes it's the text that'll get you there, but sometimes it's just the color. So you have like the blue and green one have these like intensities and movement to them, whereas the other three are, I made you a Rothko, I made you a pink washed Rothko, I made you an inverse Rothko. Now there's no kings in my deck, but the Rothkos might be the closest that you get to royalty in there. So, you know, people are always looking for like a winner card in my pretty sad deck of cards, but so that's nice to be able to give people you know, one of these. But of course, like I made you an inverse Rothko is also kind of like a blank sheet of paper, a blank slate. So I'm really excited about this kind of associative thinking in partnership with someone who I'm giving a reading to, or in someone who someone else is giving a reading to. What can I help you see about your truth as a way of like getting to some sort of useful, different understanding for yourself? Can I go to the next one? So this card is, I just wanted to give you an example of that kind of thinking. It's a blob. Why don't you want this? I think like someone pulls this card, I'm looking for people to do really that associative thinking. So they might read something about gender because it's pink, or why don't you want this? Because it's just a freaking blob. Of course I don't want this, you know, or maybe it's like, well, I kind of do want it, but it's sort of inviting whoever's looking at it into an active conversation with the image. And that's what the text and the you does. And I think, honestly, that's part of how I think we have this, I have a sort of half-baked theory about looking at art, which is, I think when we look at an artist's work, Raul's or others, I think we look at it, and even if it's someone who's long passed, we feel something from that work, right? We get something from it. And I think there's this thought that the artist, myself or Raul or Bobby, also like put something of themselves and their time and their materials into that work. And so there's this sort of imagined triangle between like the artist putting things in and the viewer sort of taking things out. And so for me, doing the readings is sort of like completing that triangle of interpretation, however sort of loose and full of projection that is. So maybe this card is like too femme or too blobby or too boring, or maybe it just like represents some kind of rejection that someone's experiencing. And Lord knows we all experience rejection in the course of the day. So if you change to the next card. So my hope is that people can do that kind of reading for themselves and get something out of it. But the book that I put together, like I said, I sort of backed into the tarot form. I ended up just the same way I pair like the text with the abstract images. I also went back to autobiographical tiny stories and paired those with the images to offer a kind of another route to interpretation in case you couldn't get very far just looking. So I thought I would just read it to you really quick. In 5th grade, I was in Sports Illustrated for Kids. I had written them a letter about their sexist and unbalanced coverage of lacrosse, and their response was to come to my house, pile my bed full of stuffed animals, and take a picture of me amongst them. When the letter was published several months later, there was a cute picture of me in my lacrosse gear surrounded by stuffed animals, and an enthusiastic letter about lacrosse. They had edited out any mention of sexism or unfairness or critique, and few understood why I was so embarrassed. So I think the same way that, art has this triangle of interpretation with the, author, artist, and viewer, I think literature does too, or can. And so my hope is that through these snippets of really specific, a lot of them super queer autobiographies, snippets from my life, that there's something that it sparks or brings up in whoever I'm giving the reading to, or whoever's just reading the book at the time. So it's sort of like two different paths towards meaning. All right, I'll go to the last one. So, you get a spread that might look something like this, where, a blessing on your house might be the past. This you, me, more, less might be the present, and if only might be the future. And I think the idea is for me very much a sense of collaboration, whether I'm actually the one giving the reading myself or whether someone else is doing the reading. It's like, what sort of blessing have they had on their house, and how might it be useful to this, confusing negotiation of self and other that they're going through now? And this sort of wistfulness that someone might be feeling in the future, like how can you pull these lessons forward? And so I think in some ways this deck is my mini exhibition in a box, but it's also, I don't know, my really heartfelt desire in like my teaching and also my work to have it actually work for people and have it give them a space to sort of think and feel about the things that they really, really need. And I think that's it. It's the next slide is just the information about where you can order more stupids. You can read the book just like a book of short stories. You can fool around with the deck and just put them on shelves like little postcards. But it's available through Three Hole Press. But thank you so much, and I'm super excited to get into Raul's work, which is the reason we're all here.
Thank you both so much, Emmy and Bobby. I wanted to pause for a moment because you both given us so much to think about. And I wanted to know first, before we go back to Raul's work, do you have any questions for each other or about what we've just seen? Because it was so rich with information about basically like a system for looking and interpreting meaning that is both open-ended and incredibly structured. And then you can choose between moving between this sort of more open-ended or more incredibly structured, almost intuitively, or in a structured way as well. want to give y'all some space to maybe have some crosstalk, and then we can go back to that amazing image that we started with, which is where I'll go in the meantime. There we go.
One thing that I really, struck by, Emmy, is just the idea that, it's open, the idea like we're all queer. So it's like this idea of like opening something up that we can insert ourselves into. So like when I got the Rider-Waite deck for the first time, it's really pretty, but it's like, it's literally all medieval white people, right? So it's just, and it's and very heterosexual. And so it's very disconnected in that sense too, right? So it's like, you're already outside of it. And, as much as I love the esoterics of these older decks, it's kind of like how I felt in high school, looking at muscle magazines and being like, I'm never gonna, I'm never gonna have a heterosexual lifestyle. I'm never gonna be, I'm just not gonna have this life. I'm a weirdo. I'm just gonna be this person. And so we've both created this thing that's based on our personal narratives and our personal experience, but also with an eye towards inviting everyone in, right? And I think like that's, I think that's extremely beautiful about your deck, because you're like bringing all your experience in there, and it feels so open and inviting just looking at it here. I wish I had it in front of me.
Thank you, Bobby. I feel the same way about yours, and how, you celebrate these undersung outsiders. I mean, I just love seeing Lee Bowery. I mean, I'll see Lee Bowery around any corner, anytime. But I think that was a phrase you said that really spoke to me about seeing, you said in your talk about seeing a version of yourself, and that was why you had taken the figures, I believe, out of the major, said royalty cards, the major cards, or
yeah, the majors, all the
I love that idea of performativity, and even imagined performativity, where you put the witch's hat on or you climb up the prop. I think some of this has to do with my relationship to my own body and my own queerness, but I always do work about people. I always do work about love, and I never put figures in my work because they're always like kind of there. And so I love the way that I feel like you and Raul perhaps are just sort of summoning the ancestors to come and help us all through this like extremely difficult world. Where there's a lot of struggle and a lot of suffering. So I think that's something we have in common too.
Well, that's the thing. It's like we are, the other thing is just like really making a tool that is reaching out, that is open for other people to actually feel something with and feel guidance from. And that's like, to me, making the Outsider Tarot is just like, really wanting to reach out there and make a tool that everyone can use and insert themselves into, right? And like, and the most incredible thing is to not, I mean, I have all of my interpretations and everything that went into the deck, but the most humbling and beautiful thing is when someone else has it and makes an interpretation of it. And it's like, seeing someone else insert themselves and occupy and take the space of the card as their own for their own journey, right? It's just like, there's something absolutely incredible about that. Whereas the older tarots are created, especially the Rider-Waite was created as a closed system like a very secret tool that wasn't supposed to be used by anyone except for initiates, right?
But I think that's, Risa, you pointed to sort of structure and looseness, and I think actually the structure is part of what makes it accessible. Like it's the leverage that allows people to project themselves in. And I think, when people feel locked out of art, I think it's because they kind of don't quite know how to engage, even though I would argue, we're all in this world. We all have senses of what color means. We all pick up on visual cues all the time, but a lot of times people are not taught that they actually have those tools to sort of interpret and use art for themselves, or to imagine themselves into visual work. So I think the structure of the tarot, and just sort of demanding that in these three images, there is meaning, then just us as human animals, we make meaning. It's like, to me, there's sort of you talked about the sort of magic in the forever outside. And I guess I think there's also, or I'm more tuned into the magic forever inside.
And I think that's what relates so well to this exhibition, even virtually. It like you go into it and you feel connected to the imagery. And I think a lot of times, like some art exhibitions, you'll go into that and feel like, what am like, I don't understand, you know, it's so exclusive and or maybe so over your head. But like in this sense, it's like this exhibition is filled with these images that we kind of know and are connected to, like what Risa said just in the very beginning with the what Pamela Coleman Smith intended was that you can look at this image and know nothing about the tarot and get something from it. That's exactly what this exhibition is doing too. And of course, you are entering yourself into this exhibition because of this huge pyramid of obsidian glass, right? You can't help but see yourself as a player inside of this exhibition. And that's that at the very onset is extremely related to tarot and oracle decks, because
I think the scale does it too. I think the scale of our bodies and I mean, I haven't been there, but I'm imagining myself through the VR, that the scale of the figures also place us as the characters in there too.
Yeah, that's very exciting to see that.
There's one really important element of the tarot that we haven't talked about, and that is chance. When you get a reading or you're doing a reading, you're picking from a deck that has been shuffled and you don't know what is going to come up. So we decided to kind of turn the show into a tarot deck for all the reasons that we've been talking about. And we've made a randomizer. And I think we're going to pull a deck or pull a card from the deck. Let's see if this works, y'all. Okay, reset image.
And maybe just to raise the stakes, if everyone in the audience would just imagine a question that they have, maybe we can help you answer that question. Just like plant a question that you could use some help thinking about. And we're going to use Raul's work to try to help read for you, if that sounds okay, or at least that's how I'll approach it. You don't have to approach it that way.
I love that. Yes, I love that idea. Oh, wow.
Oh, it's going crazy. It's like showing us all of the.
Oh, wow. Can you just maybe just click on pick random image? I wonder if that will
Stop it.
Yeah.
Pick random image. Is this it? No.
I think maybe this is it. Yeah. No.
How about if I do this?
I like that we're getting a slideshow, like a very quick.
Oh yeah.
How about this? This is I was gonna say one of the babies, but we're gonna go with a baby. We're gonna pull the trigger on this one, and I'm gonna move us back into the space and we'll locate a baby. There's one.
Oh, I like that idea. All right.
Now I will. Here we go.
Oh, amazing.
We spoke really briefly about maybe reading an image for 2021. Even today has been a momentous day. I think that the House impeached the president. So what, if we're going to read the show like a tarot deck, would this say about 2021, already only 11 days in?
I mean, the first thing that strikes me, of course, is it's a baby, is a nascent figure, and it has the snake. It looks like a snake that's coiling around it, right, or uncoiling around it. So, and the yellow color is frequently associated with the mind and clarity. So I just see like the beginning of something new, beginning of clarity and beginning of untangling, right? Just looking through those basic, and then of course this very joyous stance that this child is taking. That's exactly what I'm getting initially from this.
I would add too, like there's another way to, like, this is definitely like, I think there's this like welcoming, this, the way people were so excited to get rid of 2020, like it was gonna offer a true material change to our like political and social tragic pandemic and all kinds of injustices. So I think some of it is like our true celebration of the new year and the nascent body, but also some of the naivete and like thinking things would be otherwise just because like the calendar flipped over. And so to me, I think that's where the snake is coming in too, because the snake can be seen a lot of different ways, but it can be seen as a threat. And so like, here's the baby welcoming it in, but already we're starting to see some of these issues. So I don't think this predicts the whole year, but I think it absolutely stands in for the first 2 weeks, you know? I mean, there's trouble in baby 2021, you know? And yellow is a color of fury as well, when you read about like how psychologists think about color, and you know, you don't want to paint a room yellow because you're just going to be angry all the time. So I think we're seeing some of that bubble up of anger, some of that hopefulness, and also, you know, danger is present.
It all sounded pretty right on.
What do you see, Risa?
I definitely agree with the naivete part of it too. I think that is a definite huge thing. This idea that, oh, we're done, we're beyond it. And we're not really, right? You know, or we're just growing into it, really.
I have another question from the audience. Marcy would like to maybe get some insight into her career path. I also encourage anybody in the audience, now's the time. This program has gone by so fast. It's already almost been an hour. So if you have any questions for Bobby, for Emmy, for me, about the show, about the tarot, about anything you want to know, maybe we'll pull a card. But it also doesn't have to be reading related. So just put that in the chat. I'm going to go back to the random image picker.
Please.
Yeah, let's help Marcy with their career path, because that'll be, well, we have no problem helping you, Marcy. Oh,
Okay.
well.
Random image picker, go.
This seems to be the image right here. What is this one?
Yeah. Oh, it's good away.
It's that one, right? Yeah.
Next step.
Oh, okay. I see what you're doing.
It's not moving now. It did pick, I don't know if y'all could see this, but it did pick an image for me.
Yeah, I can pull it up on my computer. Can you see it on yours, Bobby? I don't know if it'll be as fun for.
It was a Four Seasons painting. So let me go back into the virtual reality. That is all the way back in the back over here.
And I recommend anybody look at this VR experience of the show. It's so incredible to walk through the show virtually and experience the show, since we can't do it in person and travel there. It's just so cool to see this. So this was the one that came up?
Yeah.
Well, Marcy, this is part of the Four Seasons, and if I'm not wrong, this is summer. Is that right, Risa, to your understanding?
I believe this is autumn.
Oh, go figure. Autumn. Oh, someone's okay. That's right. It's autumn. Well, I guess autumn is like an interesting one, because autumn is in terms of career, I guess I think about the colors, the leaves coming off the trees, a sort of beginning of hibernation. It's a time to store energy and also do some nice things outside. So to me, in thinking about career path, this would be a time, if this is autumn, it might be the time of winding something down. And whether that's, winding down a current job or winding down a current project, or trying to think about what you need, what serves you in your work and what doesn't, and where do you need to conserve your energy for the winter? Because I think, winter is hard regardless of your career path. Maybe not in Miami. So I'll say in Detroit, winter is hard regardless. So maybe this card is about how can you use the power and the beautiful blue leaves that are falling as a way to sort of hold your energy for your next things. But Bobby, what do you see here?
Also, I would love to hear any audience members. If you see something too, put it in the chat.
What I see is like immediately as a network with the leaves and those circular images. So like connecting into a network, it almost to me feels a little bit like a path, like a video game path. It's the autumn, so it's through the year. Like maybe there's something there, but like that one circular image that's in the very center does feel to me like a target, right? Or the actual target. So I'm really thinking like, oh, there's that devil character, and that there's going to be some sort of, interaction with an unsavory type figure on the way towards the target, and that there's a lot of possible ways to get to it. So like if you're thinking like, there's one way to get what you want, or there's one way to a specific idea, that this is actually saying that there's many ways. Some are more difficult and some are more treacherous and others are more simple. But it seems like maybe that there's a lot of work and a lot of intricacies to get there, and a lot of paths to choose in doing that. So I see like a little bit of that in looking at this image, if that were to be coming up. But I would just be that devil always, when the devil appears in a reading, I'm always thinking of illusions and ideas that we have about ourselves, and the things that we tell ourselves, and scars that are coming up from the past and being reignited, and like different hurts that just kind of keep us away from the goal, that say, you don't deserve it, go away. So that's the devil would just be like a thing that I would think of, like to be wary of your own voices and your own illusions and your own propensity to maybe hinder your forward movement.
Love that, Bobby.
We have a question in the chat that says, is the devil bad in Raul's work? I'm going to see if Raul wants to answer that question. I'm going to say no.
Can you pull another devil into it though?
Well, there's this guy. He's more of like a magician figure.
Because there's a devil baby somewhere.
Red baby.
Oh, there is a devil baby. He's it's over here.
I've always been super sexually attracted to the devils, like devil things. I think like for gay people, like the devils, like bad guys are like, those are the misfits and weirdos that I identified with very young in my life. Like they were like the Legion of Doom from the Super Friends, and all these characters are very sexual and very, very free and open. So I like really always find them to be very liberating characters, because they're things that people on the right, conservatives, religious conservatives, hate. They hate flamboyant characters that express themselves. And to me, that's what devils represent. And I think that this devil here is absolutely beautiful with its platform shoes, and it's so, it's incredible. No, it's not negative at all.
Yeah, and let's just talk a little bit break it down a little bit for like why he signifies devil. I don't think that this is, it's certainly not part of his name. All of the babies have baby names like Logan, Bethany, Evie. And this particular baby has beautiful wings, a beautiful ruby red costume. It's a great mask. And then together they all kind of come together. Hey, Raul, are you on the line?
I'm on the line.
We got Raul dropping in.
Wow.
The question from the audience is, is the devil bad in your work? And I would also say in the tarot, it's not bad either. It depends on your perspective.
I think for me, like, it's never necessarily the devil. I always just I try to think about the things that sometimes maybe I feel the closest to but can't really attain, whether it's because of specific fears or blockages that are in front of me. I portray the devil, or this kind of mischievous character, mainly as like myself trying to find that kind of answer, you know? So, you know, like my work really kind of entitles me to understand how these characters become, you know, visualized. So, you know, I guess in the Four Seasons panel, the mischievous character is almost like at the end of the year, maybe asking myself, what was I able to reflect upon that maybe was the beginning of the year, like these ideas of New Year's resolutions. So in a way, it's almost like, you know, the time is ticking. You still have time to kind of like figure out that aspect of your life that maybe you were questioning about. So in a way, to me, I've always experienced the idea of becoming friends with these kind of tormenting memories or ideas in order for it to teach me how I was able to overcome that idea of fear. And I feel like now this scary character is actually maybe, yeah, like symbolically more attractive and has allowed me to really become, I don't know, more knowledgeable in that idea of what fear actually is.
We're just over an hour. Does anybody have any more questions about anything that we've talked about tonight? Put them in the chat. I'll read them out. And to my panelists, first of all, also thanks, Raul. To my panelists, any lingering thoughts that y'all have before we start to sort of ramp it down?
I guess one of the other things I thought about but didn't quite get very far on, but was excited about in your work, Raul, was also this idea of the marginalia, in which is both, you know, in your stained glass window, but also I feel like in some of your paintings, how there's the global image and then there's the little tiny drawings that are embedded in like the St. George and Dragon. And I felt like there, at least the way I was reading it, was this idea of the sort of conscious image and then those sort of more subconscious or smaller voices, whether they're, you know, fears or hopes or hopeful ancestors, or, you know, I thought that I was really, really compelled with that part of the show, and thinking about that as part of the structure of our psychology and how we have all of these different characters, different voices in our own heads, different sides to a story. I really enjoyed that.
I also think about going back to the printing press, and that really is sticking, Emmy, with what you said about, you know, this show has those intricacies, this idea that these smaller elements of color create something completely different. And that is really something that always fascinated me about the 4-color printing process. And that boldness happens so much throughout this whole exhibition. Just that these elements becoming something else entirely. So there's just these levels of intricacy. I just keep going back to this idea that, you know, pulling all this stuff intuitively, these images intuitively, and they're all over the walls, they're all over everything in this exhibition. You really feel like directly connected to it, but then they're just on the onset, but then if you have to keep stepping closer to go into all the different layers. And as something as subtle as the color blue, right? It's just like there's like a blue blob right behind me, like it reminds me of your deck, right? It's just there's ways to connect inside every element of this. Are you looking for the devil card?
Found it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I can make it any bigger.
I mean, this is, oh, I guess you can't show it on this, on the Zoom, but yeah.
I have another question from the audience for you. When and how were you each first introduced to the tarot, and when did you tap into your heightened intuition?
Emmy, do you want to answer first?
Yeah, I guess I actually don't remember when I was introduced to the tarot per se. I know my first reading was, the first reading I really got was not actually even so long ago, maybe 6 years ago. And it was from an ex-girlfriend over the phone. So I didn't even see the cards. So she was telling me about the cards I couldn't see, and I didn't even know how they were laid out. But so it was like a bizarre and delightful experience. But I'd say my intuition is just something I have. Like one of my earliest memories is of being in kindergarten, and people would come to me to ask me to help them solve their problems, or come to me to ask them what they should do because someone was being mean to them or someone was fighting. And I just kind of remembered, like, oh, it's interesting that they come to me, and then I, try to help them. So I think, being connected with people and being interested in interpretation has been sort of a long time thing. And then, I kind of, like I said, I backed my way into the tarot as form, and have only become more interested in it from there. But I definitely got there backwards, not forwards. But Bobby, I think you probably have a more substantive answer, and Risa, you too.
I was 17 years old in my dorm room, and my friend Liz brought in this crazy tarot called the Tarot of the Cat People, and by Karen K. Kendall, I think her name is. And I was like, it's just like as a young queer artist, I was like looking at all these different amazing paintings. She invented this whole universe of cat people in different universes. She painted it. I think she's from New Mexico. She was a teacher, and she painted it with a toothbrush. It's like beautiful pointillist. You could still get it on eBay and stuff, but I was like so enamored with all of these crazy images and its connection to the universe and spirituality, and how it it actually forced you to connect to your intuition, because there's no rational connection between these cards, right? Like, except that maybe there's like something there, but they just reminded me of scenes from a movie. So, I mean, I immediately at that moment tried to create my own tarot deck. And I'm not that type of person that can just read a little white book. Those little white book things made no sense to me, because it's somebody else's regurgitation of their understanding of the tarot. So I tried and failed so many times. And I keep saying this over and over again. It really wasn't until I met Rachel Pollack, who's the tarot grandmaster and amazing, who wrote 78 Degrees of Wisdom, and also the writer behind the Doom Patrols, the first trans anti-hero comic book for DC Comics. It's just absolutely crazy mind, beautiful mind that really, in the 78 Degrees of Wisdom, explained the framework of the tarot to me in a way that I finally was able to understand it. And when I can understand the framework, when I finally understood the framework of the tarot, my intuition was really able to open up, because I'm just like, I'm almost like, in some ways, a little bit too much of a control freak. I can't, my intuition gets interrupted by my rational mind thinking, like, what does this card actually mean? What is it intended to mean? Like, what does Scorpio, and what does the sun in Scorpio and the sixth Sephiroth of the Tree of Life actually, it's just like, how do you arrive at this image? How did that, in the Rider Waite, like, why is this person looking at two cups, all these cups that are over and the ones that are full in the background in the Five of Cups, right? So it's just, I wanted to know the idea behind it. It was Rachel Pollack, who revealed that to me, and then allowed me to that was the thing that allowed me to bring my intuition in. And the tarot is really divided between the rational mind and the intuitive mind, right? It's a little bit of both for a lot of people. For me anyway, it's half and half. I'm bringing both in together, and like they're registering against each other always. So that's my that's my long-winded story from 17 to I'm 18 now, so it was just 1 year. So.
I feel like my journey is very angsty. So this was the 90s, and it was the era of like half price books. I bought 2 decks. The first was the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot, which proved to be way too energetically intense for me. And the other was Postmodern Tarot, or Pomo Tarot. And as a freshman art history student, it had canonical images of art, kind of mixed up in a cartoonish style to like match with some iconic or canonical tarots. And I remember being like kind of getting drunk and reading people's tarot as an opportunity to just tell them what I thought. Then I had a serious heartbreak. And then there's this way that the tarot is a diary. So I started doing daily readings for myself, and then recording them as a way to try to come to language for feelings that, young 20-something in the 90s couldn't express, didn't have the words for, and like tarot gave me the language for that. And now I would say I have like an abundance of language because of tarot, and then like the very like personal journey that you get to take along with yourself. That journey ended when I kind of got a chronic illness. And the amazing thing though is that I got to work with Raul and had like a sort of immediate sort of recognition of a past life, of a kind of way of thinking, because I think that the tarot has definitely structured my thinking. It's definitely structured how I engage with art. And so then it's really wonderful to come back, meet, and get to work with Raul, see like these kinds of ideas on another side, and perhaps another a similar journey.
It's really interesting to see the St. George connection. The tarot originates, generally the same period of time. Well, actually, way after. St. George is like 300 to 500, I think. So it's the tarot. I think it doesn't come around till like 1600. Am I right? So, but it's there's just like the kind of medieval imagery is like really where a lot of that really activated when those first major arcanas were created for a game. That we're pulling randomly these ideas of this arcana out of nowhere, right? And they're just what we use as the 22 like major arcana were just meant as a wedding gift to be as a betting game. And then Court de Geblon or somebody in the 1700s said there's an esoteric principle behind that, because the 22 major arcana cards link up to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. There's a magical principle behind it. And then people were starting to falsify the origins and say that they were from, ancient Egypt and all this kind of stuff, which is, I think, just links back to the idea that people just really want to decode always, right? And that's what this exhibition makes you want to do. That's what the tarot makes you want to do. You want to walk into something and start decoding it. And Emmy, that's what your deck does too. You want to open it up and you immediately want to, like you said, you look at these 2 blobs and you want to decode it. And you decode it through yourself first, right? We're always decoding it through the lens of ourselves. So that's all of this is so tied together in this kind of amazing way. And also this haphazard way, the chance and the haphazardness is always the most fun and exciting element of this exhibition, the tarot, our decks.
Totally, because chance is what gives chance, and our own selves as the decoder ring also is that gives us the blessed release from the domination of rationality. Even if that's what we're also using, it's like
right.
Get a freaking break.
Thank you so much, Bobby and Emmy. This has been really awesome. It's been so great to hear your thoughts, see your own work, see your thoughts on Raul's work. And I just want to remind everybody, you can buy both of their tarot cards. Let me show you. Emmy is available through Three Hole Press. And to sign up for Bobby's Kickstarter, you go to outsidertarot.com.
The launch is February 8th, so you can hang out on the pre-launch page until then.
So much. This is such a treat, Risa and Bobby and Raul. It's a treat to even get to hear your thoughts, and someday I want to hear about the fly. So I'm obsessed with your fly. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin and Risa.
I think we have another really cool program coming up in February about noise music.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. And I want to thank all three of you for joining us tonight. I really want to thank Bobby for referring to the space of the gallery as an esoteric space, which is the nicest description of the main gallery at the museum. And it has been nothing but a joy for me to go in that gallery every day and take a different route through the exhibition. And I've gotten so much food for thought tonight for different ways of approaching my path through the gallery. So thank you for all of this great information tonight. And this program will live online on the museum's website and on YouTube. So if anyone wants to go back and check out where to pick up these tarot decks or get other information, I'd encourage you to do that. So this brings us to the end of tonight's program. I want to thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the program. Very briefly, I just want to let everybody know that we are relaunching Virtual Jazz at MOCA with the Ciel Experience, and you can tune into that on your radio dial on WDNA FM 88.9 and at mocanomi.org, and that is on the last Friday of this month and every month moving forward. And Conversations at MOCA returns on Wednesday, February 10th with Little by Little, the funeral splendor of the ancient and icy mansion was being transformed. That is a program with Raul de Nieves, Raven Chacon, Miami composer musicians Emily Milgram and T. Wheeler Castillo of Archival Feedback, and they will be in a discussion about sound, performance art, and music and their influences, and that will be moderated by Rob Goyanis out of New York City. So we encourage you all to visit our website, follow us on our social media channels for up-to-date information about our programs and exhibitions, and we look forward to seeing you all next time. And thank you all very much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kevin. Thanks, Tiny. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks
Good
for
night.
coming, you guys.
Happy new moon. Happy new moon.
Happy New Moon,
Year. Happy
Capricorn.
New Moon.
Cheers.
Yes.
The
Happy
best for
Yellow
2021. Yes.
Happy impeachment.
Happy impeachment.
Happy impeachment to all of you.
Bye, everyone.